Let's get the European reaction to today's events from our Brussels bureau chief, Max Hofmann, and the reaction from Moscow from our correspondent there, Emily Sherwin. To both of you, good evening. Let me start with you, Max. Will it be business as usual in Brussels with a new coalition government in Berlin?
It really depends on the coalition, Brent. But there's one party that many here in Brussels, and especially in France, eye with, suspicion. The FDP, the Liberals. If they are part of a government, that might cause some trouble. There is this story that we couldn't verify, but which appeared in French media about Macron saying, so the French president, behind closed doors, that if the FDP is part of a German government, then he's done. The thinking behind that is that the FDP itself is very skeptical of some of the ideas that Emmanuel Macron is trying to sell at this moment. For example, a Eurozone budget. So we don't think we'll have business as usual. And all the coalition partners have said they want to change the business, but it's unclear exactly what Angela Merkel will do and what this business will be in the future with the new coalition.
We know that the EU has always looked to Angela Merkel for strong leadership. Can it still do that after what happened today?
Well, she's still the chancellor, and she's still the chancellor of Europe's most powerful economy. So there is built-in leadership in a way here. It really depends on what she will be able to do within the framework of a new coalition. She might not be able to follow Macron as much as she would have liked to, because as you know, the German-French engine of the European Union, which is extremely important for anything to move on, was reborn with the election of Macron, and Macron seems sort of like the rising star in the European Union at the moment, while Merkel, with this election, more seems to be like, in the fall of her political career, but she still is the most seasoned EU politician. She has the most experience, but now she will have to prove also to her EU partners that she's able to lead that new coalition, that new government in Germany, and everybody will watch that very closely here in Brussels.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, she does remain the longest-serving leader in Europe and in the Western world. Emily, let me ask you about the relationship to Russia. Is a weaker Merkel, does that translate into a stronger Vladimir Putin?
Well, if it is the case that Merkel is weaker, then of course that could be a distraction from whatever is going on in Russia for her. So that could be a positive factor for Vladimir Putin. But of course, I basically agree with what Max said. She still is the chancellor, and that's very much how it's been perceived here. The headlines here in Russia have really read Merkel wins the election, basically throughout the board. So people here see it as, this is her fourth term. But Russia's leaders, too, are likely to be following the coalition negotiations closely as well. At the moment, it looks likely that she's going to be working with the Greens and the Free Democrats. And the Greens are very critical of Russia. They're very much pro-sanctions, whereas the Free Democrats, the FDP, there was a small scandal recently. The leader of the FDP said that we should be realistic about Crimea and that the annexation of Crimea by Russia should be seen as a, quote, permanent provisional arrangement. So he was advocating realpolitik. So they certainly here in Russia will be watching closely what happens with the coalition, who she's pairing up with. But basically, people are focusing on Merkel.
I mean, let me just play devil's advocate here. We know that the AfD is going to be the major disruptor in German politics, at least for the next 4 years. Isn't that exactly what Russia wants to see?
Well, ahead of the election, German officials were saying that hacking could be likely, that Russia is trying to destabilize this election. But then the interior minister said that there wasn't any hacking. So that could show that actually Russia really does want a stable Germany. Russian-German economic relations are very important. So I think it's in Russia's interest to actually have a stable Germany, to have stability here in the country. But there is excitement here about the AfD. party. On state TV, I just saw that they had a correspondent that they actually sent specifically to the AfD headquarters. They were talking about how this will liven up the political life in Germany, and perhaps that excitement is justified. I mean, this is a pro-Russian party that's going to be in the parliament. They're against the sanctions policy, so that's likely to be seen as a positive development here.
All right. Our correspondents, Emily Sherwin in Moscow and Max Hofmann in Brussels. To both of you, thank you very much.